And joining us now as we take a look at the weather for the week ahead, our good friend Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient. Eric, hope you're doing well and hope you had a good weekend, sir.
Yeah, it's just a really cold weekend around here. I mean, we saw temperatures in the Midwest that extended, last week clear up into the northern plains that were more like mid-January temperatures. And of course, that set up that truly epic lake effect snow event we saw over the weekend. I was trying to explain to my kids what 7.5 feet of snow looks like. So they're all measuring on top of my head. I'm like, yeah, and that came in 3 days. So I wish we could have seen something like that. That'd be fun. But where I was, we just got into the cold.
Yeah, and the cold weather I know really stuck around through the weekend, but it sounds like for the most part this week we might get a little bit of a warm up. Let's just start there. What's that cold weather looking like this week?
Yeah, well, what got us into that cold air was this massive block over Alaska that stretched to like Scandinavia, and that just broke down. And so, as that did, the cold air moved to the east where it sits today. We've already started to see temperatures moderate in the plains. So, warmer weather is coming. They're going to see 50s and 60s in the plains this week. And that's all going to be out ahead of a storm system that we're all trying to hone in on, trying to figure out where this thing's going to be because model guidance has been terrible on this next system. But here's what I got now. There's a system coming into the northwest. It doesn't look like much, but it sneaks through the Midwest and meets up with decent moisture transport out of the Gulf of Mexico on Thanksgiving. And as that rides up into the eastern corn belt, it's going to produce what could be a pretty sizable, storm system that could dump a lot of rainfall in the eastern corn belt, which has been dry. It has the potential for dumping a bunch of rain across the East Coast, like the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, and then eventually into New England. What I do not know this morning on Monday is if or how much snow we could get on the back side of that as it comes through parts of the Midwest. I do know this: it does not deliver moisture where I want it, which is into the central and western plains. And the systems are not digging down deep enough into the west to start to continue to relieve some of the drought pressures that are still throughout the western United States. So we still sit nationally at 81% at abnormally dry to exceptionally dry. And I just need more action coming in the West Coast to really relieve this. And this isn't quite the same setup. But for some, late this week, post-Thanksgiving, it's going to be a soaker with some white stuff on the backside.
Well, and you mentioned the winter wheat belt, and I know we have our concerns there. That crop is some of the lowest rated winter wheat in a couple decades, I believe. I mean, there's a lot of concern with how dry it is in the central and southern plains, Eric.
Yeah, so we've had systems that have run north of it that gave the blizzard in Montana and North Dakota. We had systems that came south of it that's hit parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley and then eventually the east, but we just can't seem to draw enough moisture back into the western plains. So western Kansas into Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota have missed out on all of this, and they continue to stay dry. And the forecast going forward for the next 10 plus days is dry. In fact, the new long range is even dry for them. But the thing about this whole pattern is, does it stay like this that the entire winter? Does it break down and relieve that drought? Because by my best indications, I think that even though today we're looking at about 80% of the country in some form of drought, when we're doing these interviews in April, I think that's going to be down below 60%. I think there's some good cause to think of some change coming up here.
Well, thinking of change, as we have seen already, a bit of a cold shot here in the middle part of November. What's that outlook looking like here for the rest of the winter ahead as we get through into December, January, February, etc.? Anything new there, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, and just a reminder, this is all speculative, but here we go. October into mid-November snowpack in the northern hemisphere was big. So Siberia is covered. Much of Canada is covered. We have warm water in the North Pacific and in the North Atlantic. And that whole setup loves to perturb, it loves to influence both the tropospheric and the stratospheric polar vortex. It's already weaker than normal. I'm concerned that we could see more big shots at cold air like the one we just saw on repeat through winter. Now, the newest update from the Climate Prediction Center anchors more of its forecast on La Nina. And I get it. That's not a bad forecast either. But I don't think the La Nina lasts at the current strength much past the end of December. In fact, I think we're going to start seeing it fading in mid-December with a kind of like a let go by the mid-January time period. Now, what does all that mean? That means that other things start to take over. I think we could see an influence this year from a lot of Arctic blocking, which results in cold air snaps for the eastern United States and for Europe at the same time. And that could really be a shock to the energy demand side of things. We've talked about that for weeks now. I just continue to see that building. I do see overall, though, a more northerly storm track for the United States. So I don't think we're going to have trouble in the west with snowpack, especially the Pacific Northwest this winter. I think there's going to be an active Ohio River Valley storm track, which means several systems rolling over the Mississippi, which is good. We need to continue to bring the water levels up. Nearby you over in Memphis, we're still about 4 feet below low stage, and it's expected to get a little lower over the next 10 days or so because how dry it's going to stay in the plains. But those are some of the big things I'm watching here, both in the US and in Europe as a result.
Well, as we also got to think about South American weather, that's going to play big into our markets here and more moving forward. What's the latest you're seeing, especially Brazil and Argentina, Eric?
Yeah, well, the weekend model trends in Mato Grosso do Sul, and South went drier for the next 10 days. So did same forecast for Argentina. And Argentina's been struggling with drought. I just looked at some NDVI imagery this morning. NDVI in like Buenos Aires and Cordoba and Santa Fe, those are all in Argentina. It's actually the lowest it's been in 20 years, meaning they haven't got a crop planted. Maybe they're waiting on better rain, or the quality of the crop that's in is not looking very good from space. So that's going to continue to be an issue there. Long-term issues for December into January continue to call for drier conditions south, wetter conditions north. And if that verifies, that will be a huge soybean crop in the north. But they're struggling for rain this week and next.
Eric, always great stuff. Anything else on your mind weather-wise that you're kind of keeping an eye on here as we head towards Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about my friends in Australia. They continue to see incredible rains down there, and they're going to be on the receiving end of this La Nina until it's gone. And at this point, it's been one of the wettest springs on record for many locations. And over the weekend, several inches of rain on the east coast of Australia. So we're watching that area as well.
Well, you can sign up for Eric's daily weather newsletter on our website, markettalkag.com. And with that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien. Sir, I appreciate the time and hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you after the holiday.
That sounds good. I hope you have the same.